This is Slim and Light, and today we have the instructor of Krav Maga Ireland, Patrick Cumiskey.
It'll do. I used to have a real job. I worked in IT, computers, and I had a company that I kind of sold out of. And I was really looking at the big challenge I had. I grew up doing martial arts. I had black belts and a couple of different things. I did taekwondo as well. I did Campo karate to a second degree. I was studying for my third degree black belt and that. And I absolutely loved it. I'm a great fan of martial arts. So many people put down on martial arts, but to me, it was a fantastic part of my life. But one of the challenges I had was I just noticed that so many people took up martial arts, but they really never got anywhere. They trained with us for a few months or a few years, and they bought the pajamas and they bought the gear, and then they drifted away. And in the karate elitist world, you'd say, they weren't tough enough or they weren't good enough. You know what I mean? But the reality of it is, people only have so much time for this type of stuff in their life. And I just really, it hit me years later that we were too elitist about self-defense. And that we said to somebody, if you needed to learn to protect yourself, you had to commit to being a black belt. That was kind of the martial arts word. And that was a bit like saying to somebody who wanted to learn how to swim, well, it's no use unless you're going to the Olympics. You know what I mean? So to me, it really didn't look after people. So the model of martial arts also was, it took quite a long time for it to get to any level of proficiency. So really that was bugging me for years. And then I decided after I got out of my company to take a year out, and I was going to go after this self-defense challenge. And what I decided to do was to set a scenario. And this is actually the way the military worked. And when the military want to look at skill development, they identify a scenario you need to be able to operate in, and they train for the scenario. Instead of coming up with loads of generic skills, you come up with a situation that you need to be able to operate in, and then you deconstruct the skills, the strategy you need to deal with that situation. So I came up with the situation. And the situation I came up with was, you somehow got trapped down a laneway, and you made a mistake, and there was two people, and they were going to end your life. And I had to get you out of the laneway. That was the scenario I came up with. So I came up with the scenario, or the end, and as you used to say in books, came up with the end in mind first. And then I figured out, how am I going to train the person in 2 days? I then set the constraint, which was, I start with a 2-day course. I was going to take a normal person and put them through a 2-day experience, so that if they ever found themselves trapped down a laneway, through whatever mistake, they could get out of the laneway without dying, basically. And then I decided, how am I going to solve that? And this is 25 years ago. So I knew that my martial arts model would take years. And so I went researching, and I did a lot of other training. And then eventually I came across Krav Maga. And there was a lot of, it was unheard of at the time. I think most people know about it now, but we brought Krav Maga to Ireland. So I had to travel to take the course. And on the course I took, it was a very different day. You either had to be ex-military or to have a black belt in another martial art to even be considered. And there was a 50% failure rate. That's what I always remember. So the first course was 30 days full-time training, already being a black belt. That was just to get basics. And that was 30 days solid, 8 till 8. And what I always remember is some of the toughest guys I ever met. I was bringing British commandos, police officers, all sorts of guys. But 50%, this doesn't happen anymore, but 50% of the people did not pass. They just didn't, but they don't pass. In those days, they had a failure rate of 50%, a forced failure. And
why is it that they
it was the model that the model that these guys followed. So anyway, so that was the program. That was my training. So I brought it back, and really, and obviously I've done lots and lots of other training since then, but that was the beginning. And really, we started in Smithfield almost 25 years ago. And the real weird thing now is we get people who trained with us 25 years ago coming back with their teenagers. That's one of the strangest things. I'm in my 50s now, late 50s. And when I started doing this, I was 30, and I was training people in their in their mid-20s. And those people are all back now, coming back to me in their 50s. And they're all coming back with their teenagers, which is a weird thing. So that was the background. So Krav Maga, I want to teach people how to protect themselves. We went off and trained with Eyal Yanilov, who was kind of one of the amazing instructor. And then since then, I've trained lots and lots all over the world. But that was the beginning. And we came back in around February 25 years ago this year. We ran our first course. We went in Smithfield, and we've been running courses every couple of months, every 6 weeks for 25 years.
Oh wow, that's amazing. Yeah, that's great. So I had a look and on your website, and I saw that there was some kind of magazine, something about the Irish
Defence Forces. Yeah. No, we just had people. I don't really push this. I suppose it's on the website, but over the years, we have had, our passion has always been normal people. So if you were to ask us what is our mission is to enable an everyday normal man or woman stay safe, protect themselves, and if they have to protect themselves. But because of that, because I think people heard about us just through what we're doing with normal people. We've had all sorts of people come through our course. I've had lots of different people from military units come through. An article was written about us in the defence. Some soldiers did our course, or they wrote an article about us in the Defence Forces magazine. We've done work down the Curragh with different units, and it's can't really talk about that much. It's just, but we've done a lot of work. I suppose, to be honest with you, that happened earlier on because we were very much leading edge. In this, I was the first Irish person, I think, qualified to teach Krav Maga. We also teach it in a way that's designed, I think, the way Krav Maga is supposed to be taught, which is quickly and fast, as opposed to as a martial art, which is, and I'm not in any way saying that's right or wrong. The way I choose to teach it is people come to me and they do a 2-day course or a 12-week course. And then what you did tonight, which was very brave of you, you jumped into the beginning of an advanced course.
Okay.
So that was like, everybody here had already trained me for maybe 12 or 16 weeks. So you were straight in that. And you also saw, I think the thing that I'm very proud of, that most of the guys, they were very nice.
Yeah,
and very helpful. It's very good camaraderie.
People,
yeah. So we've done a lot of work with different people. I've done a lot of work with VIPs, close protection, and they kind of come to us. It's not really, I don't search them out. It's not something I pursue. My passion is, if you look around the room out there tonight, there's normal people who don't want to do what I did, like, and you did 6, 7, or 8 years of wearing pajamas, doing hardcore training just to be able to protect themselves. You join a program which is designed to keep you going for years. What you tend to follow rituals. You tend to drop into you punch me, I punch you. You know what I mean?
That's true.
And you tend to have a hierarchy that I really don't like belts, because I think the belts force a hierarchy into the class. That's not realistic in the real world. But I'm not saying anything bad about anyone who does that, but just looking at the factors. And I think self-defense is probably one of the toughest challenges you're ever going to come across. Because if you think about it, you spend your life trying to be a nice person.
Sure.
Right? You spend your life trying to be a good person, look after your family, go about your life and not hurt anyone. And then one day, what you do in the next 10 or 15 seconds defines the rest of your life. That is just ridiculously unfair. Yeah. So what do you learn? What do you need to learn there? Because you can't learn every possible scenario. You can't learn this guy comes at this angle, because you don't know what's going to happen, and you end up overtraining. What you have to learn is how to operate in chaos. So that's what you have to learn. So we flip it. We don't have I think with martial arts, for me, it was always trying to have a specific answer to a specific solution. And if you work all the way that through, you end up with all these permutations, and you end up with way too much knowledge. Yes. So instead of trying to organize the chaos, my theory is be the chaos. You know what I mean? Is don't actually try to organize it. Be able to almost, if you thrive in it, you start to see what we did there in the last drill you did. There was no thinking.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, no, I did. I definitely liked the pressure that you put on the people at the end, where you had people go into groups of 4, and the person in the middle was surrounded with people with big pads, and the people with the pads were rushing that person, and you ask that person to defend themselves as if their life depended on it.
Yeah, and what you want to do is, you want to put your brain
Right.
into a place where you're in trouble. Because when you're in that drill, the brain doesn't separate the factor. When you're in that drill and you're being hassled and you're so tired, like we had you trying to do press ups when people are hassling you, that's designed to create confusion. Okay, and what it is your brain then is going, as far as it's concerned, I'm in a fight. You know what I mean? And so the idea is what happens to most people is they've never been in trouble before. They've never had an aggression scenario. They never had somebody come at them. And when something happens, they just get such a shock. They can't even orientate to it. So our idea here is to put you into these drills and these exercises. So your brain, when you're really under pressure, your brain goes, I've been here before. So even if it doesn't do a perfect move, it acts in the moment, you know? Right. And that's the idea of that. There's no perfect answer to that. There's no pass grade for that exercise. There is just, did you keep fighting?
That's fair. Fight. What is the saying that you have on your website? Something survival, fight for your life? Fight for your life?
Yeah, it's probably fight for your life. I'd have to have a look. Well, our favorite saying is no one's coming. Right. You're on your own.
Right.
It's what you do. But the other thing is, I think with most people, usually the guy who attacks you hasn't trained as hard as you have. If you've done that training. Because what predators do, I call them predators, because it's not like a fair fight model. There's somebody out there somewhere, and they're looking, they pick on you or they choose you because they perceive that they have an advantage.
That's true.
And either you're on your own and they think they're bigger than you, or maybe you've had a couple of drinks, or maybe you're on your phone, you're not paying attention. Sure. But they don't choose a fight. They don't choose a battle. They choose a victim. Right. And our idea here is to be able to switch. See, to me, it's all about what you do in the first 5 to 10 seconds. So self-defense is not so much about it's not so much about the technique. It's about the ability to switch from normality into extreme self-defense strategies, chaos. So it's that idea to go from walking for the last 10 years of your life, walking home, walking down Grafton Street, walking down the street, and nothing happens. Right. Then one day, 1 second it happens. Yeah. And it's your ability to switch is what will save your life. And then after, if you do a cool move, then great. But it's unlikely.
So I'll do Krav Maga, and then at the end I'll do my Taekwondo kick.
Absolutely, at the end. Yeah, I think it's great. It's a funny thing I would say, absolutely, it's a great idea. I have a great admiration for any physical endeavor. You know what I mean? Like I think I train with some amazing Taekwondo guys, and my whole view of it is, look, what I'll do is I respect what you're doing. I love what you're doing. It's going to take you a while to get those kicks. So what I'll do is I'll keep you alive while you work on those kicks.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think the reason Krav Maga is especially kind of alluring to a lot of people that probably don't want to do something like Jiu-Jitsu. Because Jiu-Jitsu has a lot of similarities with Krav Maga with, you have a situation and you find your way out of this specific situation. A lot of psychology involved, My Taekwondo is very specified towards the kicks. With the Jiu-Jitsu, you have these different techniques, these situations that they can just dismantle you. And I think it would be similar to if I would face someone who's a professional at Krav Maga that would just dismantle me.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point. I spent 10 days in the Gracie Academy in Los Angeles doing their combatives course. So, but I think it's very, very skillful, very, very useful. Yeah. There's a lot of things. I believe people inherently know how to fight. I mean, it's like if you let them. And there's a great video of a girl, a woman fighting back. If you type, girl fights back in gym, CNN into YouTube, you'll find it. Okay. And she has no training, nothing. Okay. She's just fit in a gym. She lets this guy in. This guy tries to assault her, right. And the whole thing is caught on CCTV.
Okay.
And it was this fight that lasts 5 minutes, and the whole thing was caught. And that girl had no training, and she just fought. See, because remember, I'm going to say something to you. Very few people in jiu-jitsu with black belts in jiu-jitsu, or very few people in black belts in taekwondo, or very few people who are proficient in Krav Maga spend their time going around looking to hurt people.
Yeah, that's true.
Because the people who hurt people don't have that discipline.
Yeah.
So first of all, most people are not good at fighting. And that includes just the truth, because they don't do it, because why would you? And what gives a predator, and this is what I think what you can take away from them, what gives most predators an advantage is their ability to shock you. So what a predator has, a thug or someone who assaults women, sexual assault, what they really have is not his skill.
Right.
Is what they have is a willingness to do things that most of us would never do,
I see.
and their willingness to set you up, to manipulate you in a way so they can hit you or strike you, is what their weapon is. You know what I mean? And we can fight back against that, and we can build our skills. But I think that the technique I was talking to you about, hands up, is one of the most powerful ideas we have. So So to come back to your question, if you were doing anything and you had 2 years on me, you would probably beat me. Do you know what I mean? If you were any sport, if you're so I think that's a true point, but I don't think it's the issue facing people, because in the world, the people who attack people are typically not skilled at fighting. They're skilled at subterfuge, and they're skilled at ambush.
Fair enough.
And what most people don't get is you can take that away. And one of the things I talk about is thinking like a bodyguard. If you basically sit down and you decide that I'm going to understand a few rules, like one of the rules is I don't let anyone I don't know within an arm's length without having my hands up. That rule is designed to surf as a predator.
Yeah.
And to stop them getting their ultimate advantage, which is the ability to shock you. And then if you take that advantage away, if you then manage your space, and then you have the ability to switch,
Right.
you can take away a lot of the advantage the predator has.
Okay. Yeah, I think thinking like a bodyguard at all times is definitely a very good tip. What was the reason that you wanted to do martial arts?
Oh yeah. Well, I grew up in Finglas
Okay.
in the 70s and 80s. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. And really, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I started doing Kempo karate with Andy Fitzgerald. He's still out there. He's still in the UK. He was the most amazing man I've ever met in my life. So I was a 13-year-old guy growing up in a challenging environment.
Right.
And literally there was a guy called Andy Fitzgerald teaching Kempo karate in the local school, and I liked the idea of it. I watched, like everybody else did, I'd watch Kung Fu, watched all the movies, and we started training in Kempo, American Kempo, with it, and it just, to me, I loved it. It was the best thing that ever happened in my life. I trained all the way up to my 20s, with the black belts. Learned a huge amount of character building stuff. In some ways I don't like belts, but in other ways I do, because it gives goals and challenges. You've got the skills ladder.
Yeah.
And growing up in a tough part of the world, what I'd say kept me out of trouble and kept me on a path was martial arts, and it's why I went to college. When I went to university, in a world where people, in a part of the world where people didn't usually go to university from school, I went to university, and I would totally put that down to martial arts.
Yeah, I definitely would second you. So where I grew up, it's a very curious place. So I was grown up in the, let's say, nicer part of the bad place of town.
Yeah.
And literally 2 or 3 blocks away that shoot each other, basically.
Yeah.
And stab each other and stuff. So it became very clear we should maybe, just in case, let's get them into Taekwondo.
Yeah.
And the fun thing with me was that it was a Taekwondo dojo, but the instructor had very different plans the moment you hit a brown belt, because we learned kickboxing, we learned judo, we learned
And it's amazing.
Kung Fu,
And that's exactly what happened to me. You were talking about Qigong, I was doing Tai Chi and Qigong
nice.
with our guys. And it was getting into trouble with the martial, with the organization he was in. Because he was teaching other stuff. We were doing kickboxing. This is back in the 70s and 80s when we were doing kickboxing, we were doing combat Tai Chi, we were doing Qigong, all the Tai Chi forms. And it was, and what that bred into me was that there's something in everything. You know what I mean? That he used to bring guys, kickboxers in to train with us. And we got taught some serious lessons. And, very humbling, very, very humbling when you're stuck in remember I was saying to you about the rituals? When you're stuck in your own rituals about how you do things, and the next minute this guy's coming around, he's fighting an entirely different way.
Yeah.
So, so then what happened, and this is looping this back to what we did, I loved it, but I would say the level of dedication it took, I was obsessed. I was training every day. I was back in the day when it was 7 years training, to get your black belt. 7 or 8 years, which is the same in jiu-jitsu now, and hardcore was really, really a lot of training. And the old days is that you were a black belt 2 years before you got your black belt. Was the famous saying. And then what happened to me? So I loved it, and then and the flip was years later. I said most people aren't going to do that. And most people aren't going to follow that path, which is why I end up kind of trying to take the best of both worlds and blend that in. But I will say the mindset that got me searching for what ended up in Krav Maga came from Andy Fitzgerald, who taught me in Kempo. It was just that open-mindedness and that inclusivity of looking at different systems and looking, as Bruce Lee said, everybody, Bruce Lee studied, I trained in Jeet Kune Do as well, and Bruce Lee studied fencing, he studied, he studied French kickboxing, savate. He studied fencing, so he studied all these different things to find, and he was a dancer.
Yes, I heard that.
And so he blended all those things together. Yeah.
But afterwards, how has it enriched you?
Yeah, well, it's enriched my life by actually doing something that means something. So I ended up in my 20s. I ended up going to college. I ended up getting a great job.
Okay.
I ended up earning quite a lot of money, and I ended up developing an IT company and selling out of it, and earning quite a lot of money. But I would say I won't joke, I made a mess of my 20s and 30s because I was way too much focused on money and career, and IT and growth. And since then, I did a lot of personal development training. I trained with Tony Robbins. Okay. I did all that stuff. I went through the whole journey, and I also trained in positive psychology as a psychotherapist. And when you go back and you loop around, particularly in positive psychology, and you look at what people actually want to do, is in the end, you want to feel that what you do actually matters. Yeah. And I literally started out, teaching self-defense. And there's something about it when you meet somebody 10 or 15. I literally 2 weeks ago, I was in the Kildare shopping centre village, the Kildare village, and a guy came up to me who trained with me 20 years ago. And he came up and he's talking about and just how much he enjoyed the course and how he's used the ideas, not the physical moves, but the self-defense ideas. So I talk a lot about prevention, a lot about mindset, a lot about bodyguard thinking. And what I'm really, really proud of is the amount of people who didn't get into trouble. Nice. Who have managed to avoid situations and have gone about living. I always talk about self-defense is not about being afraid. It's about expanding, and it's about having the skills to live the life you want. Not be afraid to go out, not be afraid to go somewhere. You know what I mean? And so to me, so many people we've done our course. We've trained, we've trained like 50, 60, 70,000 people.
Jeez.
Like ridiculous. Like we're at this 25 years.
Jeez, but
25.
still,
Don't get into trouble in Dublin, honestly. And we trained a lot. I'm at this teaching this course for 25 years. And you really couldn't stick at something like that if you didn't love it. But what I love is the transformation. The moves are the moves. And but it's when you take someone and you show them a way that gives them a chance to own their own safety. To me, that is transformational for them and for me. So ultimately, what's kept me doing this and what I got out of it is doing something that matters.
yeah.
I've gone past you go through your phases. You go through your ego phases and you go through your you want to be like the best at this. But now my mission is to be the best possible instructor.
Okay.
That's the mission.
I think you're already there, buddy.
Thank you.
Wow. 60, 70,000, wow.
I'd have to check the numbers. We kind of stopped counting.
That's
But even if you do, like we've at points we've run courses where we'd have 30 or 40 people on them. We'd run 20 of those a year. You know what I mean? You're ending up. We've done a lot of big courses. We've done a lot of courses where we've had maybe 100 people on the program. So it's kind of it's a lot of people anyway.
Well, what are the tips that you would give any person that may be interested in getting into self-defense, may be interested in going into martial arts, but is thinking, I mean, what's the use? I mean, Dublin seems kind of safe, or Ireland. Or What are the tips that you would want?
Well, everywhere is safe until it isn't.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, you can never predict. And if you think about it, when you wake up one day and something happened to somebody, they never thought that was going to happen. Someone's punched or killed outside a bar in Grafton Street or in town or in Dalkey or in wherever. It doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Everywhere is safe. Like, we've had all these horrible stories of people just out of nowhere being assaulted. And remember, the statistics might be low, but if it's your family, that doesn't matter. If it's you, it doesn't matter. So what I'd say to you is everybody can learn to protect themselves.
Right.
Every single person. Because self-defense is multidimensional. And self-defense starts with awareness. And it starts with the intent to be safe. That's the very first thing. And it's to treat yourself. One of my top tips, I mentioned the bodyguard, but I even bring it back further. Treat yourself like somebody you care about. Treat yourself like would you let a friend behave the way you behave yourself sometimes? Would you let a friend wander home drunk on their own? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
no, you would not. You know what I mean? Yeah. So first of all is start with treating yourself like a VIP, because you are to your family. The hole you will leave if something happens to you is terrible. You are, and your job. I don't say you're more important than anyone else. I'd say you're among many important people, and you have a right. You should protect yourself because you're a valuable person, and you're valuable to other people, your family. And then the second thing is, once you do that, you adopt the bodyguard mindset. And so a little trick is, when you're going out, how am I going to get home? Ask yourself, how am I going to get home? The worst number in the world when it comes to safety is 1. Like, soldiers don't all wander up to the battlefield on their own. They travel in units. What's the first thing a police officer calls for when something goes wrong? They call for backup. But we all think, well, I'll wander around on my own. Right. So the worst number in the world is 1. You have to understand, predators look for victims. And it's not that it's a victim, it's the situation that makes you the victim. So if you walk down a certain street on your own where predators hang out, the chance of being assaulted just go through the roof. It's nothing to do with you. It's just to do where you are at the time. So be aware of your Treat yourself like someone. Being careful. Always have a plan for getting home. Understand the rules. There's certain rules, and people go to my website. There's loads of free stuff. I give a lot of stuff away for free. So key rule is never let someone you don't know within an arm's length without having your hands up. There's a whole dynamic behind that, because it puts in action your awareness. Your hands go up often is enough to stop a predator, because they now realize they're going to be in a fight. to realize that you're not going to let them take them. What else would I say? I say experiment. I mean, I think look, you don't have to commit to anything forever. You can go to a beginner's class. If a self-defense martial arts thing is good, they'll have a very defined thing you can do. Like we have a 12-week. Way we work is we work a weekend course or a 12-week course. So to me, that's life skill time. So you're not giving you give up one evening a week for 12 weeks. You work on your fitness, you get to meet people, you learn a new skill, and then if you like it, you can keep going. So that's every time is don't be afraid to experiment. I think if you're going into this, ask yourself, what are you looking for? There's a difference between doing deciding you want to get fit. I think people confuse things. Some people will say, I want to learn to protect myself and get fit and do this and do that. And I said, well, they're different things. Do you know what I mean? They're different things. Maybe if you want to get fit, you should do CrossFit, or you should do, F45, one of these things. Maybe that's going to be better for that, right? Because I don't think you should glorify violence. So one of my fears around martial arts is I think violence as a hobby is not a very positive thing.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's me, someone who did violence as a hobby for a long time. But I think it's violence as a tool or as a necessity or as part of a continuum of response to stay alive. I'm okay with. But I'm not sure if ritualizing violence is net positive.
That is a very good point. Yeah, because if you have your threshold to resorting to those rituals is much
absolutely,
lower.
absolutely, and it's what you train to do.
Exactly,
it's what you train. Like when we're doing our knife defense, I showed you the first technique, which was scarper. But the problem is you don't get a belt for that.
Yeah. No. I think that is a really, really good point.
And I'm not giving out or in any way saying other people doing things is wrong. I'm just saying the question for me is ritualizing the study of violence net positive? That's is a debate I exist in.
Yeah,
that's all.
That is a really good point. You talked about your 12-week course for beginners. So how long is the course for the advanced?
So what we do is I wanted to get away from the whole belt system, the belts model. I'm very nervous. I think it's fantastic for children. That's my honest opinion.
Yeah.
For young adults or for young children, the belt system teaches goals. It teaches a ladder principle. It's got short term. It's absolutely fantastic. I think the way I teach self defense is I teach our core 12-week program, which is because if you think about it, soldiers don't go to self defense class every week. What they do is they go in and do a combat phase of their training, in their base training.
Right.
And they get that as part of one of the toolkits they get for all their training. And then they go off and they might do some refresher training. So how we work is we have a 12-week or a 2-day course, which is our base. And once you do that, you're in our gang. You know what I mean? Okay. You're a graduate. But what we do is we give you a free refresher course every year for life after that. Wow. So we're about, and we give it, when someone does our course, we take away our having to remember, we give them the entire course on video, so that they don't get caught up and have to remember everything. You can practice. But then if you like it, so what happens, the way I say it is, look, do the core program. And that could be our experiment. And that could be, worst thing is you're going to come along 12 weeks, learn something, and get some ideas, and 12 weeks is going to pass, and what you've given up is watching Netflix for an hour and a half. You know what I mean? That's your cost. Right? That's your sacrifice. And then if you like it, what I do is I run in military style. So I run a 12-week class. I have a semester. So once you do my base course, there's a new program every quarter. Okay. So tonight you came along, and you were very brave. You came along on night one of what I call my weapons integration class. Okay. So this 12 weeks is going to be about knife defense, stick defense, and gun defense, all in 12 weeks. Another 12 weeks we would do ground defense, ground combat, and that kind of tends to be, I'd say, 20 to 30% of the people who do our course, because I love the people who just want to do my course and get on with the rest of their life.
Okay.
That's what I'm about. Like, so, what I'm about is I'm not about enrolling you into our crazy world.
You're not about indoctrination.
Into my cult.
This,
Yeah, you're already in. Once you do the 12-week course, you're in, and we love you, and we'll look after you. We'll give you a refresher, because that, for most people, that's enough. Because I think do your self-defense, and if you're into taekwondo, do taekwondo. If you're into yoga, do yoga. If you're into pickleball, do pickleball. Because you only have so much time.
Sure.
So anyway, that's our philosophy. Our philosophy is, we're here for you. 12-week course, a free refresher course every year. It's a 1 day usually, and we say free, and we charge a tenner, and that goes to charity. So it's a great way of looping back. Okay. People come back to me 10 years later and get the refresher in. They pay a tenner, and that money goes to whatever charity we're covering that year. And they refresh their skills, keep the ideas going, keep the thing. But then we have a small group, like everything. Like you saw tonight, and again you saw how fun these guys are. And these are guys, they're VPs in IT companies. Okay, yeah. Guys written 2 books in cryptocurrency.
I don't know how I come across, but I'm quite the nerd myself.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so it's normal people. Yeah. So anyway, but it's, to me, you saw the dynamic. Yeah. It was a dynamic of fun, but also when you were training, your friends were training for you, with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I saw you whack a guy when he was on the ground with a pad at one point, so you were getting well into it.
Yes. I'm quite intrigued by your teaching style. You're very charismatic, but you're also, you get to it as well. And I think the way you combine different kind of teaching methods and kind of talk about positive psychology a little bit. I saw the reason I know a little bit about it, because we had a person on who studied positive psychology. Great. I think the viewers will have something to look forward to, and certainly I'm looking forward to diving more into the mystery, the legend that is Patrick Cumiskey. How do I pronounce it, sir?
Cumiskey.
Cumiskey. Thank you very much for
Great, thank you very much. Well done, thank you.
And this was Slim and Light. All right. That is our outro.
Well done, I love it.
Thank you very much.